For generations, God's people, the Israelites, lived as slaves under the iron fist of Egypt's pharaohs. Their cries echoed under the scorching sun, their backs bent by the weight of ceaseless labor, their spirits crushed by relentless oppression. They built monuments to a king who saw them as nothing more than tools, but a promise, ancient and divine, whispered through the suffering. A promise of a deliverer, a man chosen by God himself would rise from among them, a shepherd turned prince, a prince turned fugitive, destined to become the leader who would challenge an empire and guide his people to freedom. This is the true story of how faith, courage, and divine power converged in one of history's most epic events. This is the story of how Moses parted the Red Sea, far from the palaces of Egypt. In the desolate wilderness of Midian, Moses lived a quiet life as a shepherd, but God had not forgotten him, nor had he forgotten his people. On the slopes of Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, a sight both strange and wondrous caught Moses' eye. A bush, engulfed in flames, yet not consumed by the fire. As he drew closer, a voice, powerful and eternal, called his name from within the blaze. Moses, Moses, it was the voice of God. I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt, the voice declared. I have heard their cries. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Fear gripped Moses. Who was he to stand before the most powerful man on earth? He was slow of speech, a fugitive, a man of no standing, but God promised, I will be with you. This will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you when you have brought the people out of Egypt. You will worship God on this mountain, armed with a simple shepherd's staff and this divine promise. Moses set out to fulfill a destiny he never imagined. Moses and his brother Aaron walked into the opulent throne room of Pharaoh, the air thick with arrogance and power. Before the gilded throne, Moses delivered God's command. Simple, yet world-shattering. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go. Pharaoh, a living God in his own eyes, scoffed at the demand. His face, a mask of contempt, hardened. Who is the Lord, that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go. Not only did he refuse, but he increased the Israelites' burdens, ordering them to make bricks without straw, turning their suffering into a cruel sport. Pharaoh's heart was a stone, unmoved by the plea for freedom, blind to the divine authority that stood before him. But this confrontation was only the beginning. God's power was about to be unleashed in a way Egypt had never seen, a series of judgments designed to break the will of a stubborn king and reveal the one true God to a nation of idolaters. The stage was set for a battle not of armies, but of wills, a battle between a mortal king and the king of all creation. God's judgment began to fall upon the land of Egypt. The first plague was a sign of the terror to come. At God's command, the Nile River, the very lifeblood of Egypt, turned into blood. The water became foul. The fish died, and the Egyptians could not drink from their cherished river. Yet Pharaoh's heart remained hard. Then came the frogs, swarming from the river, covering the land, invading every home, from the palace to the humblest dwelling. Pharaoh begged for relief, but once the frogs were gone, his pride returned. One by one, God unleashed plagues of gnats, then swarms of flies that tormented the Egyptians while sparing the Israelites. A pestilence struck down their livestock, boils afflicted their bodies, and hail of fire and ice rained from the sky, destroying crops and people. Still, Pharaoh would not yield. Then came the locusts, a massive devouring cloud that consumed everything the hail had left behind. After the locusts, a deep oppressive darkness fell over Egypt for 3 days, a darkness so thick it could be felt, plunging the nation into chaos and fear. But in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived, there was light. Each plague was a direct challenge to the gods of Egypt, a demonstration of God's supreme power. But even after 9 devastating blows, Pharaoh's defiance held firm. The final plague, the most terrible of all, was about to strike. God had warned that every firstborn son in Egypt would perish, from the firstborn of Pharaoh on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl at her mill. The Israelites were instructed to mark their doorposts with the blood of a lamb. That night, the angel of death passed through Egypt, and a great cry rose up from the land, for there was not a house without someone dead. Pharaoh awoke to find his own son, his heir, lifeless. The pride of Egypt was shattered. Grief and terror broke his stubborn will. He summoned Moses and Aaron in the dead of night and cried, "Go, leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds and go. And also bless me." An entire nation, held in bondage for 400 years, was finally free. In the dead of night, the Israelites gathered their belongings and marched out of Egypt. A pillar of cloud guided them by day, and a pillar of fire by night. They were following Moses, heading toward the wilderness, toward a promise and an unknown future. The Israelites' journey to freedom led them to the shores of the Red Sea. There, they were trapped. The vast, uncrossable sea lay before them, and behind them, a cloud of dust on the horizon grew larger and larger. Pharaoh, his grief turned to rage, had changed his mind. He had mustered his entire army, his elite chariots and horsemen, to pursue the fleeing slaves and drag them back to bondage. Panic and fear swept through the Israelite camp. They turned on Moses, crying out, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." But Moses, his faith unwavering, stood firm. "Do not be afraid," he called out to the people. "Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then Moses cried out to God, and God commanded him, "Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water, so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground." Moses lifted his wooden staff over the churning waves. A mighty east wind began to roar, blowing all through the night. The waters of the Red Sea began to rise, gathering into two immense, towering walls, and a path of dry land appeared, stretching from one shore to the other. A pathway of salvation had been carved through the heart of the impossible. The Israelites, their fear turning to awe, walked into the chasm, with walls of water looming on their right and on their left. All night long, they journeyed through the sea on dry ground, an entire nation marching to safety between the liquid mountains. As the last of the Israelites reached the far shore, the Egyptian army, blinded by their pursuit, charged into the sea path without hesitation. Pharaoh's chariots and horsemen raced between the walls of water, determined to recapture their prize. At the break of dawn, God commanded Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses obeyed. The walls of water, held back by divine power, collapsed. The sea returned to its full force with a thunderous crash, and the waters swept over the entire Egyptian army. Not one of them survived. As the sun rose, the Israelites stood on the shore of freedom and saw the bodies of their enemies washed upon the sand. God had rescued his people that day, not with swords or spears, but with a miracle. Moses proved that when God fights for us, no enemy, no matter how powerful, can overcome us. Faith opens impossible paths, and trust in God brings deliverance. Thanks for watching.